Hey, you'd better put on something warm because today we're going to be in the great outdoors in the state of Maine to celebrate trees. And oh, don't forget to put on your hard hat. See, when you're in the woods where trees are being harvested, there's always the chance of branches falling. Lumbering, or logging, is the business of harvesting trees. Just like a farmer harvests a crop, loggers harvest the trees. They've got to select the right trees to cut down, and not too many, just enough so that a new forest can grow again. Think of all the things we use every day that started out as a tree. Furniture, the floors in my house. My house. Logs for the fireplace, musical instruments. Trees also provide homes and food for animals. And paper. Paper that goes into books. Like this one.
See you later.
Thanks. Long ago, our country was like one big forest. In order for roads, cities, and towns to be built, trees had to be cleared. Well, a lot of stories came out of those tree clearing days called American Tall Tales. They're about people who are larger than life and are usually based on real happenings. Well, over the years, one storyteller after another keeps exaggerating the facts until you have an authentic American tall tale. Well, one of the tallest of those tall tales is the story of Paul Bunyan, the legendary logger who cleared a path across our country.
Paul Bunyan. Retold and illustrated by Stephen Kellogg. Read by Buddy Ebsen. Paul Bunyan was the largest, smartest, and strongest baby ever born in the state of Maine. Even before he learned to talk, Paul showed an interest in the family logging business. He took the lumber wagon and wandered through the neighborhood collecting trees.
My tree!
He soon grew into a sturdy lad who wrestled with the grizzlies. One morning, Paul awoke to find the world under a blanket of blue snow. He heard a moan from inside a snowdrift, and there he found a shivering ox calf. Paul adopted him and named him Babe. Both Paul and Babe began growing at an astonishing rate, but the ox never lost the color of the snow from which he'd been rescued. At 17, Paul felt an urge to move on. He said goodbye to his parents and headed west. Paul wanted to cross the country with the best lumbering crew available. He signed up legendary lumbermen like Big Tim Burr, R. Murphy, and the 7 Hackett brothers. As soon as he had cleared the land, pioneers moved in to set up farms and villages. On the far slopes of the Appalachian Mountains, several of Paul's men were ambushed by a gang of underground ogres called gumbaroos. Paul grabbed the camp dinner horn and blew a thunderous note into the gumbaroos' cave, determined to blast the meanness right out of them. To Paul's dismay, the gumbaroos responded by snatching the entire crew. A wild, rough and tumble rumpus began inside the den. When that historic tussle was over, the gumbaroos needed 6 weeks to untangle themselves. Paul's next job was to clear the heavily forested Midwest. He hired armies of extra woodsmen and built enormous new bunkhouses. The men sailed up to bed in balloons and parachuted down to breakfast in the morning. Unfortunately, the cooks couldn't flip flapjacks fast enough to satisfy all the newcomers. To solve the muddle, Paul built a colossal flapjack griddle. The surface was greased by kitchen helpers with slabs of bacon laced to their feet. Every time the hot griddle was flooded with batter, It blasted a delicious flapjack high above the clouds. Usually, the flapjacks landed neatly beside the griddle, but sometimes they were a bit off target. Fueled by the powerful mixture of flapjacks and syrup, the men leveled the Great Plains and shaded the slopes of the Rocky Mountains. Suddenly, a blizzard buried the entire mountain range. Now, that blizzard continued for several years, snuffing out spring, summers, and autumns. Babe became so depressed that Paul asked Ole, a celebrated blacksmith, to make a pair of sunglasses for his friend. When Babe saw the world colored green, he thought he'd stumbled into a field of clover. He began eating the snow with such gusto that soon all those pent-up springtimes simply exploded. Paul and his friends invited some newly arrived settlers to join them in a celebration of all the holidays that had been missed. After the festival, the lumberjacks continued their journey, but as they headed southwest, the blistering sun and the giant Texas varmints proved to be more of a problem than they had expected. While crossing Arizona, the griddle curled up like a burned leaf, and the batter evaporated. Deprived of their flapjacks, the lumbermen became weak and discouraged. Paul's great axe fell from his shoulder, gouging a jagged trench, which today is known as the Grand Canyon. Disaster seemed certain until Paul found a family that could sell him a barn filled with corn. When the flaming sunrise hit the barn, it exploded, and the lumbermen awoke to find themselves in a raging blizzard of popcorn. Dizzy with joy, they pulled on their mittens and began blasting each other with popcorn balls. A westerly wind kept the cooling clouds of popcorn swirling about Paul and his crew until they crossed California and reached the Pacific Ocean. After he crossed the country, some say that Paul gave up lumbering and rambled north, searching for new areas of untouched wilderness. Sometimes his great bursts of laughter can be heard rumbling like distant thunder across the wild Alaskan mountain ranges, where he and Babe still roam.
Lumbering is hard work, yet it seemed like a snap for Paul Bunyan. Then again, Paul Bunyan was so big.
How big was he?
Well, he was so big that when he fell out of state. How would you like to be big and tall like Paul Bunyan? What would you do that you can't do now?
If it was true, I'll pick up a dinosaur. If it was true, touch the sky.
I wouldn't have to swim across rivers. All I had to do is just take one step over the river.
Eat a watermelon, like an apple. I'd like to play baseball and hit a baseball all the way around the world. I would catch airplanes in the sky. And I go to the shoe store and buy big, big, big shoes. Read a big, big, giant book.
I would eat 20 packs of potatoes.
This peaceful and beautiful part of the forest is living proof of nature.